And welcome once again to yet another episode of the HoriZone Roundtable. The regular season has upon us, so we got to have another episode here. I'm Bob McDonald. I am at Campus Press Box, and I am on Twitter at Bob McDonald. As always, with me, Jimmy Lemke.
Hello, everybody. You can find me on this game at PantherU, the game being Twitter, also PantherU.com, and this podcast, wherever podcasts are sold.
Absolutely. Four Lights Out FM is our main site, and Stitcher, iTunes, you name it, man. We're everywhere. Yeah, I had to bail out. I had to bail out of Twitter for a minute because that was all that's I didn't want to deal with dumbassery this week, but yet here we all are. So anyway, and how could I bail on Twitter? I mean, the season has begun. College basketball is officially back, and HoriZone League teams they're all back. And the first game, I know one game a season does not make, but looks like by and large most of the teams doing pretty good there. Friday, the 6 teams that played on all won, and then we had Saturday, which was the Valpo versus Trinity Christian, and then the Northeast Ohio Coaches versus Cancer Classic that involved both Cleveland State and Youngstown State. And probably the most surprising thing to come out of Saturday was the convincing win, I might add, of YSU over Akron, who is widely favored to be on top of the MAC. So I was pretty well surprised when that took place. Just knowing maybe it's because I'm biased by the fact that Youngstown State has perennially been sitting at the bottom half of the HoriZone League standings forever and ever and ever. But man, they looked pretty good yesterday.
Are we expecting
yesterday?
I mean, let's be totally like chill about this. Is Akron really taking a step back? I confess I don't follow them as closely.
No,
since
Akron is not. Akron is one of the favorites to win the MAC. So they were coming in here as, if you will.
It's a good thing. It's a good thing to see that we're taking the next step to be a better conference than the MAC. And obviously that's an annual thing, and it's never really totally settled, but it's good to see that for the most part we are for early on, that first win, Youngstown State against Akron. I mean, you're talking about a team we got that victory. That's a big deal. So that annual HoriZone League MAC series, I mean, we got that MACtion off to a good start for the HoriZone.
Like I said, I totally underestimated. Yeah, I have to admit, I did with as many people as left Youngstown State in the offseason, I really underestimated what they still had left. They still have Cameron Morse, who did an outstanding job last night. Matt Donlin. I'm sorry. Matt Donlin, of course, one of the relatives of the Dolan family of the Indians ownership. Anyway, yeah, they are. Yeah. But yeah, Matt Donlin, I think he shot a ton of threes yesterday. They just did an amazing job. I know it's a little early in the season to be eating crow, and we may be spitting it out if Youngstown State reverts back to being Youngstown State and loses a division.
It's one game. It's not like you can be like I said, it's one game. It's not like you can just say, "Oh, well, this is obviously the new norm." Is that Youngstown State is now this team that's as good to beat the MAC. I think Youngstown goes into that game
Now,
carrying a lot more to win it. So maybe it's, maybe it's a fluke.
Keep in mind, it's
one game.
Youngstown. It was a home game too. So, I mean, it was essentially a home game for them. Yeah, this Coaches versus Cancer Classic, it's a 4-year deal. It's Cleveland State, Youngstown State, Kent State, Akron. They play them in the court for 4 years. So I think I want to say next year is at the Wolstein Center, or wherever Cleveland State is planning to play, if they get around to actually knocking down the Wolstein Center, which is also apparently in the works. But yeah, it's a nice thing because there's always been kind of a Northeast Ohio rivalry thing going on between the 4 Division I schools here. So push comes to shove, where is Cleveland State and Akron and Youngstown State and Kent State going to play each other every year? Probably, maybe not. I mean, Cleveland State's not playing Akron this year. I don't think Youngstown State is playing Kent State this year. But as long as you're playing one of the two schools, it really does kind of vault the Northeast Ohio schools out of the throes of the obscurity of the Northeast Ohio sports landscape, at least temporarily. It's nice to have, and it's for a good cause too, because obviously it's the Coaches versus Cancer Classic. I mean, they put this together in honor of Peters, who is the former who died of cancer. So it's all for a good cause regardless. Looking through the live stream, by the way, Jerry Slocum had him, they went all in, by the way, on the I think their focus was on breast cancer. So Youngstown was playing with the pink jerseys, the pink outline jerseys, and Jerry Slocum went all in with the pink, looks like at least the pink sport coat. So they went all in on that one. And hey, it paid dividends.
I have a pink sport coat.
I had a pink shirt, but for reasons that escape me,
For me, it's more about being as close as I can to my hero, and that's.
There you go. On the flip side of that coin, you had Youngstown State, who won that was the late game. The matinee, of course, was Cleveland State, Kent State. A little bit of a technical difficulty trying to get to get in to watch or listen to the game first and foremost. If anybody who follows me on Twitter probably knows, I basically read everybody the riot act on that one, because that was horrendous. ESPN, the Watch ESPN channel on Roku and the Watch ESPN app on neither of them worked for the first part of that game. So if you're a Cleveland State fan or a Kent State fan that didn't make it out to Youngstown, you were pretty much out of luck for probably the first chunk of that game. You probably didn't miss a whole heck of a lot, because they, by the time they turned it on, they were the Vikings were down by 15. But when you looked at that score, you're thinking, oh boy, here we go again, because the dread of the 9-23 season last year was our minds. But
hey, they came back. Yeah, they came back.
They did. This was a good win. They lost in overtime. They just kind of ran out of gas, but it looks like at the very least they have some pieces now that they didn't have last year. When Gary Water, yes, the Oral Roberts transfer, he started out a little slow, as everybody else did, as it turns out. But yeah, he led the team with 17 points. Jamarcus Hairston got us the guy who got the Vikings to overtime. The junior college transfer.
Those guys teamed up to score 30 points. So,
yeah,
not nothing. Exactly. Not for nothing. That was good to have those guys.
Absolutely, and it was really good. And it was honestly, and Evan Claiborne, the freshman, who I was really big on when they signed him, because we were all I wasn't sure what role he was going to play in this, because they got Jamarcus Harrison, they got Anthony Wright, another junior college transfer, and I really wasn't sure what role was going to play in the rotation. But man, am I glad he did really well in the exhibition, but he definitely held his own during this game, which is good because Kent State's got some big guys up front. They've got some they got some size up front. So that was more so than Cleveland State, which is going to be kind of the running theme for them this year. But yeah, one big thing though too, because as one of the big things is that Gavin Peppers, who is another one of the junior college, he was supposed to he was one of the favorites to start at point guard. He has a bone bruise, and he's going to be out 3 to 5 weeks. And then DeMonte Flanagan, the only senior on that team, he, according to SID, Cleveland State's SID, Greg Murphy, I think he had tweeted it out that he actually had to go to the hospital because he was, I guess he was having chest pains. He came back, but he was definitely out of commission for the game. So hopefully that's not a serious thing for DeMonte. But man, that would have been, having him on that team would have been very nice because it kind of depleted them a little bit in terms of the rotation. That's probably where kind of getting worn down at the end. State, but I gotta say, where this team was last year, proportion to this year is a little bit more optimistic, at the very least. This isn't a team that's starting out feeling like they've got one hand tied behind their back.
I mean, I think there's room for plenty of optimism, and it's not just with those guys. There's also optimism, down south. Wright State transition starts off with a nice pop. I mean, how much can you say about Mark Allstork coming in there and dropping 30 on Southern Illinois? I was very impressed.
Yeah, and that's the thing, and it's interesting because you when we were going through all the preseason prognostication, there was where Wright State was going to finish was wildly varied. But when you got a guy like Allstork on your rotation, or on your roster, I mean, Scott Nagy, who did just outstanding State, and we talked about this last week. You get those guys in, and you get the quick buy-in in like that against a Southern Illinois team that as we've talked about is kind of a little low end of the they've been struggling for quite a few years, but you're still talking about a team from the Valley. It's a good start. It's a nice win for them. What was the final score? I think it was 95-91 or something like that. Or
yeah, it was a barn burner. I don't recall the actual final score of it, but it was quite good.
I find that interesting because you're gonna we talk about this. We talk about offensive makeup of the HoriZone League. We did last year. It wildly varied. Obviously, on the very low end was the Cleveland States. On the very high end, you had Oakland with Kay Felder. But I gotta say, if they can jack up 94, if they're going to jack up that many points on a regular basis, I mean, I don't think you're going to score 95 points a game. I don't think any college basketball team will ever do that. But if you get a team can score a good 70 to 75 points in this league.
What was Loyola Marymount averaging?
I don't remember.
Back in the early 90s.
Oh, they were with their running gun. Oh, they were averaging. I think they were averaging.
I want to say they averaged something like 115 or something like that, or maybe no, that can't be right. But I know they were scoring 100 almost every time out.
Yeah. Does that happen? Would that happen in this, would that happen in the college basketball landscape now? Probably not. You don't
Will it
have,
happen again? Yeah, yeah, totally.
don't get me wrong, college basketball as a whole is trying to get to a point where, they're cutting down the shot clock, they're trying to make the game faster, different things. But do I think they're ever going to get to the point where you're going to be averaging, you're going to have a team that's going to average triple digits a game? Probably not. But especially not in the HoriZone League.
It depends if defense becomes out of vogue, and I would say that a conference like the HoriZone League is where it's more likely to happen, because if you get that one program that the points, that puts a whole lot of talent on the roster. Mid-major conferences where they're going to be able to do that, because that's where you'll find the least amount of talent, defending them. I think the least likely conference you'll see that in is like the Big Ten, where half the teams are playing slower ball.
Yeah, like Wisconsin. So, but yeah, honestly though, I think I really think there are too many programs within the HoriZone League that put a lot of focus on defense. And so I as much as I would like to think that, that it is possible that could be a high scoring HoriZone League team could come to the forefront, just given the fact that you've got quite a few coaches within this league that preach the press, Gary Waters being one of them. I don't see it. I mean, if they're going to have a high offense, it's going to be depressed every time they play like a Cleveland State that presses a lot. We'll see though. I mean, we'll see, but there's definitely some possibilities out there in terms of some places that have some serious scoring power.
I do want to say that it's pretty cool to see that even though we've got a lot of nice new players coming into the conference that are putting up some big numbers, it's nice to see that returnees are the ones that are really pacing the conference. Allstork, Peters, Morse, Stephen Davis, Martez Walker, and Matt Donlin are your high scorers.
Oh, and one last new face that I did want to talk about, and this goes back to the Cleveland State Kent State game, and that's Cash Thomas, the kid out of Canada. He stepped in. Gary Waters, as you know, is notorious for not generally starting freshmen.
Yeah,
but at the same time, Gary Waters has also prided himself on just pulling kids out of nowhere. And I think Cash Thomas is one of those kids, because the kid almost got a double-double last night. And that's phenomenal, especially where they started out during the game. But yeah, Gary Waters has this very interesting gift of, finding those players that that's not on anybody's radar. Last year it was Rob Edwards, Norris Cole. He was the only guy that Cleveland State was the only Division I school that offered him a scholarship. Now you got a kid like Cash Thomas, who's coming in as a freshman and being able to contribute in this, be able to kind of take a situation like an injury to Gavin Pepper to a more veteran player like Gavin Peppers, and take that in stride and run with it. That does bode well, and I think that's that keeps happening at Cleveland State, but yet here we are.
Yep. I think that there are definitely some things that Gary Waters is very good at that has allowed him to put together that that kind of talent at Cleveland State. It's almost like there's always a reload. There's always, instead of us,
which was like, oh my God, what are we doing?
Well, yeah, but it took a bit of time. Now it's
More like this year for them seems more like a typical we're rebuilding, we're going to surprise a bunch of people. It seems like more of that type of situation that we're used to at Cleveland State, as opposed to last year, which was just a train wreck all over. This seems a little different than that. And so when you look at the team, if you're getting this type of performance out of them, and I want to say more of the second half of this game against Kent State as opposed to the first half, because the first half was second half like performances from Cleveland State later on down the road, they're going to be a tough out. And they always are, except, last year. And maybe it's because last year was so awful that the expectations are kind of, everybody's kind of like, I don't know. And I don't know what might happen, but, it seems a little bit more of a normal situation for Cleveland State now than it was last year. Do they kind of exceed expectations? I think maintain they're going to.
I think every team that loses a bunch the year before is almost always guaranteed to not be expected to do much. So I would not be surprised at all to see Cleveland State, just completely usurp what we all thought they were going to do. What I think is going to be pretty cool.
It surprisingly would not be the first time. Wouldn't be the first time, but yeah. State, but again, that right is for Wright State. They're in a much better situation. I mean, yes, they had the pieces in place already when Billy Donlin was there, but now they had a pretty
senior laden team last year. There were some guys that they just did not have into this year that they had last year, so it wasn't like. I think there was a lot of people who thought. I think a lot of people would look at. Their roster coming into this year and think, well, they had their shot. Their shot was last year, and they screwed it up. Their 3 shots in a row, they messed it up, and that's why they went and fired Billy Donlin. But I don't think they caught that. I don't think anybody really caught the fact that Billy Donlin's never built a team to have one really great year and leave. When he built our team, he built it for 2 years, 04, 05, and 05, 06. And he just kept loading the JUCOs in, and it got us there. But we ended up having that empty cupboard. And Wright State did not have an empty cupboard, even though they were led by seniors last year. I think Billy Donlin built a very strong program.
And now
whether or not you think that he was the coach to lead them, to the next level. It doesn't really matter. What matters is that he built the program. So these guys that that are being taken to these guys are being taken if they go really far. That's not just we changed our coach. So obviously, we're a much better team now because we changed the coach. It's not just that. Billy Donlin did build that program, and I think that one of the first people that's going to say. That Billy Donlin was a big part of their success would be a guy like Scott Nagy. Absolutely be able to admit that. Well, Billy left me with a really good roster, a really good program. So it's a good thing. And moving out of Ohio, I do want to mention us before I move on to before we move on to others. Along the same thread, who's leading the Lavelle Jordan era start with Rob Jeter recruit in Brock Stull. You mix your own players, and you come out with something new. And thankfully there was some talent left. Thankfully we didn't lose younger guys like Stull. We lost what could have been a really great year this year, but I don't think Wright State was. Wright State wasn't screwed over. They didn't lose a lot of players by attrition. They really did. It was very it was as smooth a transition as you could expect from a program where quite a lot of fans and a big chunk of the roster, from what I gather, pretty much all of them were big fans of their coach. For them to be so supportive of Billy, for that, you tip the hat to C. Montgomery Burns at age 45. Bob Grant. Bob Grant, who
still has you blocked on Twitter.
Well, that's fine.
I'm sorry. Oh yeah.
somebody who works for Wright State Athletics, who cashes checks from Wright State Athletics, sent me this really funny collage of pictures of Bob Grant in the same, like, standing in the same kind of position that Mr. Burns is sitting in. And I could not stop laughing when I was looking at that thing. And I'll share it with you at some point because you got to see it. But it's just it was just really funny.
Who is that man? That's just the man I need.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, bring me Scott Nagy. I will give him half a, and he will do exactly what I want him to do. Excellent.
Yeah. It was pretty good.
Don't forget hashtag. Oh yeah, come on, man, you're killing me here.
for all the vitriol, at least there was some humor about it inside Wright State Athletics, and at least they've been able to make that transition. It's
exactly.
hard to get much out of our game. MSOE is a Division III school in town, Milwaukee School of Engineering. Great program for athletics. I'm good friends with I've known the baseball coach Steve Sanfilippo. He played for us when I was a student. He was a couple of years older than me. Our soccer coach Jimmy Banks is an alum from Milwaukee, one of Team USA's all-time players. So MSOE is really good. They got Kevin Conway as their SID, sports info director. He was at Milwaukee for a long time. I want to say 10 years or so. He was an assistant SID here, and it was really good to see that it's really good to see that a program like MSOE is doing well, and I'm happy that we could get that game against them. It didn't really do much.
Right.
It really didn't do much in the way of telling us what we have as a team.
As most of the non-D1 teams, and by the way, in that vein, congratulations to Detroit for not losing to a non-Division I team this time around. Way to go!
Yeah. There's two things that you want to avoid. That's embarrassment and injury, and Milwaukee avoided both.
Yes, and that's usually I mean, as you know, as much as we decry putting non-D1 teams on the schedule because nobody wants to watch them and blah 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 blah. There's a method to the madness, like it, but what we like has no relevance. They're there for a reason. They're there to
pretty much.
As much as it probably, I want to say, I don't want to say self-esteem boost, but definitely a way to kind of work out the kinks of, say, for example, you're coming off a high major team and, a game against a high major team, and you want to kind of get back into, you go play a non-Division I team.
Yeah, go ahead.
So,
I used to be a guy who was really against non-Division I games because I always felt like we were weak.
I understand the thought process, but I still don't like it. I don't like it, but I understand. That's all I mean.
It's not. I mean, what is it about it that you understand? I guess is what my question is.
I understand the reasoning behind why you would schedule a non-Division I team. I understand that, with a non-Division I team, you can give your
what would your reason be behind scheduling?
I would say if you, like, for example, I know, again, if you're playing, you want to get some time to just it's kind of an adjustment game where you can do some things in the rotation you couldn't necessarily do against, say, a higher mid-major or low or high major team. That opportunity is not there. You could do that against a non-Division I team, and it's not really gonna. You can fiddle around with the roster, fiddle around with the rotation, and it's not gonna cost you big time. There are occasions where it does, but it doesn't happen that way. So that's kind of the thought part. And again, when you come off of a tough game, like a lot of these non-D1 teams that are scheduled, they're usually coming off of a tough game that was played previously, like against a high major or one of the upper echelon mid-major teams. And so it's a kind of a way to get back into, I think it would be, especially if you got pounded by a high major team, it's a good way to kind of get yourself back into the swing of things. Now, from a fan standpoint, to watch, who the heck wants to watch a non-Division I team? I mean, but that's, you take the good with the bad. And I'm still not on the bandwagon of doing this. I still think if you are a season ticket holder and you're paying full price for the entire for each game the entire season, and 2 of those games are against non-Division I opponents, I'm probably jumping through my skull. But I get it. I get the tactical part of it. I get the tactical part of it.
If you limit games to Division I teams, what's going to happen is that mid majors are going to have their RPI just drop. And the reason for that is that those non-D1 games would not get replaced. We wouldn't be replacing MSOE with Duke. We would be replacing MSOE with, Western Illinois or Southern Utah or Centenary's not Presbyterian. We'd be replacing them with a low major, and low majors will invariably get poor
Try it
RPI.
again. I'm pretty sure Presbyterian's a D1 school now.
Yeah, I know. I'm saying we would be replacing a Division III school with D1. That's what I'm saying.
And that's the other tactical thing that I understand. That if you play a non-D1 school, it's not going to affect your RPI. So there's that third component to it.
And it's not that it's not going to affect our RPI, but I don't think it affects Valpo's RPI, because if Valpo or Oakland or somebody's in the running for either an NCAA tournament bid or at least wanting to get a better seed. If we replace all those non-D1 games with D3 and D2 games, or we replace those games with low major Division I games, the RPI for whoever's at the top of the conference is going to drop because everybody else's will drop with them. So it's about making it so we are not getting that practice game, getting that game that's that you have a good shot of winning, but not giving up the goose on the RPI. I think it's a good thing.
Yeah.
Plus, it's a good thing for schools like MSOE. I don't
disagree with that in any way, shape, or form. I understand the method to the madness. I just think of it from a standpoint of somebody. I think of it from a standpoint of a fan who doesn't, even like the cat, again, I look at it from the standpoint of a season ticket holder who's paying full price for each of the games that they're going to, and that I get the reasoning behind why these teams are scheduled. It makes practical sense. It makes perfect tactical sense. It makes, from a scheduling standpoint, it's a non, it's kind of a low risk, obviously low risk based upon the RPI ramifications. But if you're in the process of trying to build a fan base, are you going to build a fan base by, attracting, what do we have? We had Tiffin, and we've got Lake Erie College for Cleveland State. How many people are excited to go out for that?
Well,
I mean,
I would argue,
and don't get me wrong. I mean, yeah, it's awesome that they're winning these games. I mean, Cleveland State beat Cedarville by 40 last year, and literally that was and that was essentially the highlight of the season. But the highlight of the season is against a team, most people have never heard of. You're going to be sitting in an empty gym.
Well, it might be that. It might be that in Ohio and in Cleveland you just have so many schools, just because it's such. It's
well, not just so many. Well, and not just so many.
Okay, go ahead.
So many schools. Remember too that you have you have so much so many other distractions, and keep in mind that Ohio is no matter what school you're going to, Ohio is bad or indifferent dominated by the Ohio State University. So no matter what you do, you're going to suffer by comparison. And I'm sure on I don't know how that works with Wisconsin and all the Wisconsin schools, but I know in the state of Ohio, Ohio State is king. Doesn't matter where you're from. I'm not a fan of that whole thought process, but I also didn't go to Ohio State. So, I mean, that's a whole other thing.
Yeah, things are not the things are not the same here because we don't have many schools. We just don't. We have 12 or 13 schools that are 4-year schools in the UW system.
Yeah.
And 13 2-year schools that are UW something. And all of those, there's only 3 that are in Division I. So it's Madison, Green Bay, and us. And then as for private schools, there are small schools, but they're not as many as one would think. It's not like we have, there's no interest in Tiffin. Well, when MSOE comes in, MSOE brings a bunch of people.
Yeah.
Doesn't get to play us very often.
See, that's interesting because it's funny you mention that, because when we have nearby local schools that come in, like a John Carroll or a Baldwin Wallace, they're not bringing that many people. I mean, they're not bringing like half of their alumni. They're not doing that. Even when you have and this is something we ran into last year, even when you have a team that has a school that has a whole bunch of alumni in the area, like any MAC school, be it Akron, be it Kent State, be it Ohio U, people that it makes it look like it's an Ohio U home game, but it's not going to be, you're not going to be, your gym, your arena is not going to be busting at the doors. You're busting at the seams, for it's standing remotely. It's not going to happen. And by the way, to your point, you have the three public schools. I think you'll have one or like maybe one additional D1 school in Marquette. I don't think you have any more than 4 Division I schools in the entire state of Wisconsin, do you?
No, that's it. That's 4. Marquette.
Well, yeah.
Marquette, Wisconsin, Green Bay, Milwaukee. That's it.
Because we have, obviously, as you know, we have a ton more.
Honestly, you have 11
at
or
least
12,
a dozen
don't you?
division schools. At least. I mean, at least a dozen schools. You got 2 down in Cincinnati. You got 2 in Dayton. You've got Bowling Green in Toledo. You've got Akron, Kent State, Youngstown State, Cleveland State, Ohio. Yeah, you got a bunch. But everything falls in fiddle to the Ohio State University.
Same here.
From that standpoint, especially in terms of Ohio, in terms of like Cleveland State and Wright State and Youngstown State, you've got to compete against that on top of everything else. And, even in spite of the fact that, Thad Matta at Ohio State hasn't exactly been setting the world on fire in the last couple of seasons with the Buckeyes, you're still going to get a lot more eyes on that program than you are, and it is not, I don't like, but it is what it is. I mean, it really is. So
I don't think
anyway.
I don't think it's the same everywhere. And the non-Division I games, there's some interest for locally for those at those non-Division I campuses. There's the opportunity for the team to get better against a team that may not be the greatest, but also is not like garbage. You're practicing against warm bodies and against let's face it, these kids are still college basketball players. It's not like we're just playing against the YMCA pickup game team. We're playing against an actual team. So it's better. It's better than people think. I'm happy that we keep doing it. I used to be an opponent of it because I'd rather, see us play a game like Northern Illinois rather than MSOE. But we're not going to replace MSOE with Northern Illinois. We're going to replace them with, Poughkeepsie State or whatever low major.
Did you just make a dodgeball reference, man?
Yeah, exactly. It's a bold strategy, Cod. Let's see if it pays off for them.
All right.
Let me say this. I do think that that there should be some point where Gary Cole and Jason Bateman get together, and the two of them you just call some kind of sporting event as the two Cotton and Pepper.
And I think with that, I think we're going to close out for the week. All right. Next week, we'll be back with all of you. Again, if you find us on Four Lights and find us wherever you find good podcasts.
Yes, everybody, listen to us talk some more.
All right. More talking, but not today. We're out.